Ziaad Suleman, thank you very much for joining us. And I know you've been chairing the Digital Economy Working Group, and probably exciting stuff that's emerging out of there between yourself and your counterparts from other member countries of BRICS. Tell me about the main areas of discussion that you focused on.
So good morning, Tim. Thanks for the opportunity. Yeah, it's certainly fascinating in terms of the dialogue and the collaboration. You know, the digital economy is an area that permeates all sectors and industries. So I think the cooperation, the deliberations, the exchange of innovative ideas, thought leadership is definitely beneficial as we think about how do we progress not only our business, but also society, our communities, and take people along a path. In the digital economy, we primarily premised on 4 core areas that we've been thinking about. The first is around infrastructure and connectivity. The reason we focus on this is because if you don't have the correct infrastructure and you don't have connectivity linking people to the digital economy, then it's very difficult to take advantage of the actual digital community. So if I take a simple example of, if somebody in rural Mpumalanga is connected, and they have good, proper, efficient connectivity, then the issues and the opportunities around things like medicine, e-learning, proper services through the internet, all of those things become a reality. But if you don't have the infrastructure and the connectivity, then what you end up having is a marginalized society. And that we cannot have as leaders because we are creating an exclusive society rather than an inclusive society. So having that infrastructure and connectivity almost creates an opportunity for us as a country to allow people to be integrated into the digital economy, and it also narrows the digital divide rather than widens it. So that's one aspect that we've been thinking about and talking a lot about. And there's countries like, for example, India and China that are very advanced in the networking space, and we find great benefit from that, and we can learn a lot from that. Equally, Brazil, have portions of the Amazon forest, believe it or not, that are actually live linked in terms of networks and connectivity, etc., and we can certainly benefit from those discussions. So that's one aspect. The second aspect that we've been focused on is emerging technologies. And it's such a wide array of a discussion because technology is so dynamic. It keeps moving. It's never static. When we think about the 4th industrial revolution from where we've come, has really taken us 20 odd years to get to the 4th industrial revolution. But if we go all the way back to the first, it took 100 years from the 18th century to the 19th, from 1800 to 1900 to get, through that first industrial revolution, which was largely premised off steam power. Then from 1900 to 1970, approximately, we then had mechanization as a result of electricity. Then from the late 1970s into the early 2000s, we had the flux of the internet and automation, which really mechanized economies. So now in the 4th industrial revolution, we're no longer thinking about mechanization. We're thinking about efficiency. We're thinking about optimization. And all of these things come as a result of 4IR technologies. And that's primarily around things like cloud, things like data and AI, things like cybersecurity, automation, blockchain, 3D printing, and so many other aspects that we can just continue talking about for a long time. So those emerging technologies, the key discussion points around that is how do we utilize those technologies in a converged world, bring the benefit of that to not only large business, but also emerging business, to those people that are skilled and those people that are unskilled, those people that are in urban areas and those people that are in rural areas. How do we bring all of that together? The third facet, which ultimately is extremely important as a bedrock of our economies across all the BRICS countries, is around SMMEs, entrepreneurship, and innovation. In this particular area, if we're able to get the right advancement and utilization of technology, what we will definitely see is a reduction in unemployment, something that we definitely need. But that goes hand in hand with the 4th area, which is around skills, capacity building. And in this particular area, we do not want to develop skills in a vacuum. because simply developing technology skills means that we may be creating an oversupply of one skill, and therefore rather than reducing unemployment, we actually find that we have the opposite. So how do we get all of these harmonized to get an efficient outcome? And not one works on its own. It cannot be independent. Skills has to work with technology. Technology has to work with the ecosystem. The ecosystem has to work with regulations. So it's all intertwined, and we've got to bring it together.
Now, Ziaad, obviously the SMEs that you mentioned, and even citizens of a country like South Africa would say, great, we have all these technologies, but somehow those that are homegrown innovations, we don't see them being commercialized to the extent that in South Africa we use the technologies that come from elsewhere, including China in recent times, and the money generated by these technologies and goes to those countries. I think it's more than 90% of the money in the IT space that goes to those countries via licensing and so on of the product. So how is a country like South Africa going to benefit from these engagements and the issues that you've identified, but from a entrepreneurship point of view?
Yeah, it's a fascinating question, because I think the opportunity is there. I think the most important thing is, how do we scale it? And this is the benefit of technology. So when we think about innovative technologies coming through, I think we have a lot of young entrepreneurs that are bringing innovative thoughts and ideas through, but what we don't have for them is that platform to scale. And that's what we've also been talking about in some of our dialogues, is how do we create a common platform of where smaller emerging technologies are actually showcased on a larger playground. And therefore, the buyers of technology are able to understand what's available in the market, because they have an ability to play with the technology in a test environment or otherwise. And by doing that, what we are ultimately doing is we're creating an access to market. And that's what a lot of these smaller entrepreneurs need. If we take that one step further and say there's meaningfulness in these technologies and they serve a purpose, then what we need to do is create not only the platform, but the marketplace. The marketplace includes incorporating these innovative technologies into our very own supply chains. So in our large companies or our buyers of technology, they should be aware of these technologies and give these young entrepreneurs or innovative new technologies an opportunity to participate. There's one further aspect to this, and that is some of these technologies can certainly become part and parcel of other emerging technologies, which is part of the convergence. So we don't necessarily have to have a technology that sits on its own. We could also have a component of a technology that fits into a broader scale solution that makes it more innovative and more productive. And that's also another way of scaling. The world has become one. It's not about South Africa, it's not only about Africa, it's not about BRICS, but really technology is able to permeate all sorts of boundaries. But the most important thing is creating the opportunity and platform to take it on.
Let's talk about the people element of technology. And I'm sure there are lessons to be learned from big countries like China and of course India when it comes to the development of skills, is one of the leading countries in that regard. Is there anything that South Africa is learning from these countries in terms of the adoption of technology and participation in the development of the technologies? And is there anything that South Africa is teaching the world on this front? I mean, 4IR is a buzzword, right?
Yes.
Many South Africans have heard about it, but generally speaking, majority of people do not even know what it means. They are using technology, but they are not necessarily the key drivers of the adoption and utilization of these technologies.
Sure. And there are many areas in our economy where we actually lead and many areas where we follow. And that's the reason why South Africa is not absolutely first world, neither is it absolutely third world. We're somewhere in between, which really gives us great potential and opportunity to be better. And that's a great position to be in. If you take, for example, the financial services in the form of banking and insurance and perhaps even retail, we're certainly up there with the world's best. If we look at our systems, we look at our efficiencies, our go-to-market, we're really, really doing well. And many other countries in the world are in fact utilizing our technology and adopting our methodologies and processes. Whereas if you take other areas like perhaps maybe agriculture, mining in certain aspects, as well as some other aspects such as fisheries and aviation, etc., we've got a lot to learn from some of our other partners. The key thing here is where we are good, we should continue leading. Where we are perhaps still learning, we should not try and reinvent the wheel. What we should do is turn to our partners, understand how their markets work, take the good, but make our own decisions. And I think that's fundamental in making sure that we have a progressive society. So that's part of the deliberations and the discussions we've been having, is taking advantage of the learnings in other countries. So for example, we've had engagements with, as I mentioned, China and India, in terms of how do we actually get connectivity into our rural areas, but most importantly, at an affordable price point, because it has to be easily accessible for our people. Similarly, Russia have fantastic, initiatives around improving female education. And there in our digital skills work group, we focused on those types of aspects. China, when it comes to e-commerce, is really the leader, and as we think about the platforms of giving people an opportunity to participate through digital economies, that's where we are interacting in order to learn the lessons, but also make sure that we have the right frameworks, because governance frameworks, all of those things are equally important.
The utilization of technology in schools, delivery of education and so on. But in China, as an example, children are so familiar with the technologies that they use to learn. And South Africa, we've known about this for some time, but we're very slow when it comes to introducing those technologies in our schools. How do we overcome that? Any thinking on that coming from the work groups, or is this something that must be left to the government to implement?
Yeah, I think those days of where you rely on one source to fix the problem are over. It's really about public-private partnerships. So therefore, we can't only look at the government and say, solve everything. I think as a private sector, equally, you have a responsibility. But as a private sector, you also don't have to solve everything on your own. That's why it's important that there has to be a harmonization of all facets of all stakeholders. So when it comes down to education, the way of the world now is digital. But that means that in order for people to really embrace it, you have to have infrastructure. And the infrastructure includes a simple thing like either a smart device, whether it be a mobile phone or a tablet or a computer, etc., so that they can link in. And the link in is in through connectivity in order to take advantage of what's actually being broadcast through the internet. So these are extremely important facets. Part of the challenge we have is that we have a huge underdeveloped market, not only in rural areas, but even just in peri-urban areas. So how do we as a society get the infrastructure to the people at an affordable price point, but then once we have that as a base platform, essentially provide the content that places people on an equal footing and gives them equal opportunity in order to take advantage. Then you can worry about, okay, well, what's the most innovative technology in education out there? But if you don't have the base platform, then ultimately you cannot elevate yourself into those other discussions.
Ziaad, thank you very much for talking to us.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you.